Well, good evening, everyone. During our live broadcast, we invite you to call 888-773-4496. That's 888-773-4496. Send us your email anytime to comments at libertytalkradio.com. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We have a pleasant surprise for you. This afternoon, we have with us, or calling in, Mr. Foster Gamble of the famed Procter & Gamble Company, who will be discussing his vision and something he's been working on for decades, actually, the Thrive movement. And that encompasses so many items, so many issues that are occurring, that have been occurring around the world, I guess since the dawn of time, that he is attempting to tackle and make the world a better place. We will learn more about the Thrive movement. There is a video, by the way. It's about 2 hours and 12 minutes long, though I do encourage people to watch it. If you can't watch the whole thing at one setting, just watch it in sections. I did that one time, and then one time I just sat down and watched the whole thing. I was so captivated by it. It is now absolutely free of charge on the internet, and that'll give you a good feeling, a good idea of all the work that he's encompassing working. For example, he's been working on free energy projects, food projects, world peace, our monetary system. Just about all the main subjects that you can discuss or can understand or concerned about, is involved in the Thrive movement. I think he had called in, but he for some reason hung up. I guess he was holding on too long. I hope he does call back in here. It's about 2 minutes or 3 minutes after the hour, and I'd like to see that. Hopefully, he calls in. But while I have you on the phone, while I have your undivided attention, I'd like to remind you that Liberty Talk Radio also broadcasts commercially on 1170 KFAQ. That's in Tulsa. And in the wintertime, when the sun goes down early and comes up late, comes up late, I guess, and goes down early. The broadcast can be heard just about everywhere in the United States. It's, I think, biased towards the East Coast, but you can be almost anywhere and listen to 1170 KFAQ, and I encourage you to do so. We have some interesting programs. We broadcast on Sunday morning and rebroadcast on Saturday evening from 7 to 8 Central, and we broadcast actually in the morning between 6 and 7 Central in the morning. The reason for that is that I'm a morning person, and that was the only slot available, and that's when I wanted to broadcast. I used to broadcast on Saturday evening, couldn't do it, too tiring. We don't have a call in yet, and I'm surprised that it's almost 5 minutes after. I do hope he calls in, because I have been I've been waiting to hear him, hear up from him, and there is no one there. We will wait another 5 minutes. Tonight is the presidential debates. And folks, I don't know if I am going to watch them. And there are many, many reasons why. One is that they're orchestrated. They're predetermined, the questions are predetermined, the rules of engagement are predetermined. In other words, no one wants to make the other guy look really all that bad, because if one guy had free reign, that gives the other person free reign. And what would happen is that the people listening to the debate would realize that both are unqualified to hold office in this country, even dog catcher. They'll realize how rotten the system is, because they'll go and they'll start telling the truth to get the better upper hand. And once they do that, bingo, the ball game is over. So what they do is they have rules of engagement, whereby they say, well, no, these subjects are going to be off. No, you can't have any statistics. No, you can't mention Afghanistan, and you can't mention this, and you can't mention the fact that I wrote hundreds of executive orders that are unconstitutional, and you can't mention the fact that I have drones over Libya and Yemen and Syria, and it's killed countless thousands of innocent people. All these things are off the table. The type of questions that you will hear will be something like, tell me, do you think that you are more qualified than your opponent to run the country? These fluffy, stupid, elementary questions that, that no one should be exposed to. And the unfortunate part is that the people who are listening are going to be listening with wide eyes and bushy tails and just, absorbing every word and say, well, he sounded a little bit more forceful. And instead of saying, what do you mean sounded more forceful? Is this guy, did he answer the question? Is that a legitimate question? And could he really answer it? No, we don't do that because we have trained the public well enough to recognize that not to recognize, but to expect absolutely nothing from these debates. And if anything happens, if anyone says anything, oh, he said this, and they're going to be talking about it for weeks. It's garbage. And one reason why I don't think I'll listen to the debates is because, quite frankly, I don't think I can. I honestly don't think I can. I get so upset when I listen to these guys. I really get upset. I think I'm going to do tonight? Instead of listening to the debates, I think I'll take my dogs for a walk. Just get out there and not be exposed to this garbage. It's absolute garbage. I don't have to listen to the debates because tomorrow, or afterwards, or tomorrow on every station, every radio station, TV station, they will be dissecting every single word that everyone said. And they'll say, like, well, he should have been a little bit more forceful here. It's stupid things. It's stupid things like that. They will never mention the Constitution, and they will not allow the Libertarian candidate to participate. Now, if this was a fair and open democracy, a free country, why wouldn't they have the Libertarian candidate participate? Well, I don't think he could win, Well, what difference does it make? Well, I think we have our guest on the air. Foster, is that you?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much for calling in. I was wondering, did you call in a little earlier today?
Yes, I've been trying to get through.
Oh, okay. Well, I noticed the number came on board, and then it went bye-bye, and I said, uh-oh, I wonder if he just gave up and decided.
Well, then I called Gary and gave him the numbers, and I was trying to find out whether you were going to call me or me call you.
Oh, I see. So, I guess this was prearranged not by me, and so everything fell between the cracks. I apologize for that. We should have made that more clear, and I made all these assumptions because I do this all the time, and it just flew over my head. Well, thank you.
No problem. Here we are, and I'm really glad to get a chance to talk with you.
Thank you so much, and I consider it an honor and a privilege that you've taken your time to be on our program. Your work is instrumental, to so many things that are going on, so many events that are going on around the world, and let me be brutally honest with you. I have no idea where to start, and I think I'll be very. I've watched your videos on more than one occasion, and I have it's so broad and all-encompassing. I'm confused. But let's start. Let's start.
Well, it took me a lifetime to research and 8 years to make, so it's understandable that it's a little tricky to figure out how to put it into one little conversation here.
Well, maybe you can help me out. Do me a favor, and if you, for my benefit and for the benefit of our listeners, because by the way, this show is going to be rebroadcasted on a commercial station, 1170 KFAQ, and they're working out the works of it, but to determine whether or not it'll be this Saturday night or next Saturday night right after Glenn Beck. So we'll have a nice audience on that as well.
Right.
1170 KFAQ is the big talk station here in Oklahoma. But anyway,
yes.
Maybe you can, just to enlighten everyone and give everyone a basis from which this conversation is taking place, talk about the Thrive movement, a little bit about yourself, and give us a 5-minute overall so you can kickstart this whole thing.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, first of all, the core of it all is a movie called Thrive, What on Earth Will It Take? And the whole purpose of making this film was to essentially be a trailer for the website, which is massive. And the website is a toolkit for the movement. And that's where Thrive Movement comes in.
Okay.
Because we wanted to create a film that would give people a minimum sufficient amount of information to connect the dots on what's really going on in the world, not what you just hear from the corporate media, but what's really going on behind the scenes that has billions of people in dire straits and the world not thriving.
Right.
And so the film goes into that in the areas of science and consciousness and justice and liberty and ETs and free energy, and it really covers the gamut, probably more than any media piece that we've ever seen. But we really felt that was our mission, was to connect the dots and give people a coherent story for what's really going on, what's in the way of our thriving. And then they can go to the website, go as deep as you want to into any different sector, any different issue, any different topic that we explore. And then if you get motivated to do something about it, if you've been feeling helpless or you've been taking action but you're having trouble connecting with other people or wondering how to really amplify the effects of your efforts, then we've got a massive solutions hub that we just launched a couple of months ago that not only gives you lots of strategic advice on things you can do, but links together groups from all over the world. In 2 months, we've had close to 350 groups from over 40 countries have signed up, and now they're sharing information and best practices and petitions and lawsuits and artwork and all this kind of stuff with each other, so people don't have to be recreating the wheel. So we're really all about the solutions, but we want solutions that are grounded and based on a solid understanding of what's really going on in the world.
Okay. I need to, I need to look at your website again, and I need to look through those committees and groups that are forming and see what I can fit in. Can I just give you just one beef that I have? And I have so many of my neighbors and friends disagree with me.
Sure.
We all know that water is essential around the world. Well, not only is essential, but there's a shortage of drinking water around the world. There are probably 2 billion people in this world who have never had truly a clean glass of water, and that's a guesstimate. Most people ration water, and now I live in a typical middle-class neighborhood, and people go out and they water their lawn. And their bills will be 10, 20,000 gallons of water used to water their lawn. I can't connect those dots. I never water my lawn. My neighbors hate me. I don't have a bad lawn. I have a good lawn, and it's not And I said I can't do that. I said I don't want to waste any water. And they say, why? I said, well, because and I sound like a kook, well, this guy's a nut, And I said, no, I just can't do that. People say, oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I said, no, how could you watch people literally starving to death, people who are dying because they're dehydrated, and that you put 20,000 gallons of water, 20,000 gallons, you can save thousands of lives, And anyway, that's where I come from, and I assume that the Thrive movement is all about that. I mean, this is a small portion, but about that. How close am I?
Well, I think it's first of all, I just really appreciate your compassion and commitment in being willing to look into an issue like that and take uncomfortable action. I think it's also important to look and see, okay, if you don't water your lawn, does the water that you didn't use actually get anywhere near those people who don't have something to drink?
That is correct, right.
Because I think in most cases, just like with food, the problem is having clean food and having a distribution system that actually gets it to the people that don't have it.
Right.
And the good news is that there is plenty of food and plenty of water on this planet to feed and nurture everyone who needs it. But on the other hand, most of the water has been polluted, most of the food is being hoarded, and why would that possibly be? And if you follow the money in either of those areas or any other area, you tend to get back to the same interests, the financial elite who are not only centralizing power to themselves, but apparently, and the documentation is overwhelming, have an agenda not only to control the lives of virtually everyone on the planet, but to actually eliminate the lives of a large percentage of the people on the planet so that there are more resources for themselves and also so that there are fewer people to have to control.
How often are you told that you are a conspiracy nut, man? You know, get on the program.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying, but even on my radio programs, the email I receive is along that line sometimes. And so what you are doing, and you are so vocal and you are so visible and so public about conditions that we have today and where the root causes are, which then puts you in the conspiracy category, I suspect that you get bombarded with that from time to time.
Well, I used to. When I was just kind of talking about this in social situations or to my family and friends and so forth who weren't familiar with it, of course they thought I was starting to lose it and getting paranoid, going over the edge, all those conversations. Once the film came out and the website, which we've had completely and thoroughly fact-checked by independent professional fact-checkers, every single fact that we portray, and we make a clear distinction between the facts that we are reproducing and our speculation about how those facts fit together. Since Thrive came out, I get very little of that because the evidence is so overwhelming. Yeah. Where did the whole notion of insulting the concept of conspiracy can't come from?
Right.
When Bush Sr. got busted on the Iran-Contra affair, his whole administration was convicted of conspiracy. Right. When the AMA tried to shut down chiropractors, when chiropractic was first coming out, they got indicted on conspiracy charges and convicted. There's a wonderful website called 33 Conspiracies That Turned Out to Be True. And it's just a start. It's a primer to how prevalent conspiracies are on this planet. So the first step is for people to get educated enough to get over the notion that there's no such thing as conspiracies. Because if you don't think that there's such a thing as conspiracies, then you're very easy to manipulate by the conspirators. And conspiracy is simply, two or more people gathering together in secret to do illegal or immoral acts against other people. Right. And that is prevalent on this planet right now.
Right. Yep. Foster, it's about almost 20 minutes after 5, and I'd just like to stop for just 2 seconds for station identification, okay? Just hold on.
Sure.
Don't go away.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective, not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Folks, this is Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. We are honored to have with us today Mr. Foster Gamble of the famed Procter & Gamble company, right? Of many years ago. That's when
many generations ago. Yes.
Are you a great grandson?
Great-great-grandson.
Great-great-grandson. And I guess people refer to you to that or bestow that upon you all the time, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that either. Anyway, because you're an independent person.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. It's a true fact, and I inherited some money, 5 generations later, and part of that enabled me to spend some time investigating this whole global agenda and really learning about liberty. So, I owe a debt of gratitude there, and some members of my family, including myself, have spent, a long time trying to get the Procter & Gamble company to move in a direction of more integrity and social responsibility. We've had some limited success. The efforts continue.
Okay, well, I guess you sort of introduced yourself. That's what we have today. Give us a call, 888-773-4496. That's toll free, 888-773-4496. Our email is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Please send those anytime, if you have any questions, comments, whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. Now, I have to admit, although world hunger and war are two that just should not exist at all, and there's no reason for it to exist other than if you have some very, selfish, diabolical reasons. But the one that fascinates me is free energy. And I know this goes back to Tesla and others, as your video aptly points out. You know, what happens to me is when I see that, I say, why didn't someone with big bucks, with a few $1,000,000 that he can just throw away because he just has so much money, not take one of these free energy systems or concepts, go off someplace and far away somewhere and develop it and just for funsy just put it into effect?
Yes. Well, it's a great question. And I can only tell you that is now starting to happen all over the world. And I think we'll be hearing about it soon because people have learned the lesson from these early inventors and early investors who didn't really take the risks seriously enough and got their labs raided, their equipment stolen, their efforts shut down, and in some cases, in most cases, their lives were threatened. In some cases, they were actually disappeared or killed. And so now people are getting smarter about making sure that they have enough money to not only develop the technology successfully, but have sufficient security systems and marketing systems and a business model that will actually allow it to get safely out to the public. But, a really interesting aspect of this free energy, Joe, is that at the core of the Thrive movie is this fundamental energy pattern of the universe that mathematicians call the torus. I'm about to turn 65 years old, and the most important thing that I have found throughout my entire life is that the universe has one sustainable energy pattern, and it's the torus. And whether it's the electromagnetic field around a seed or the shape of an apple or the field around a human body or a planet or a sun or a solar system or a galaxy, at every scale, it's this same whirlpool, donut-shaped vortex that the universe uses to sustain a healthy system. And given that we're needing to figure out how to sustain healthy systems if we're going to survive as a species on a healthy planet, it's nice that the universe is actually presenting blueprints everywhere. So the first major discovery of my life, I wasn't the first, it just, in my quest, the first major thing I found was the nonviolent martial art of Aikido. And it's really based on recognizing that we reach this toroidal field, and if we respect others' toroidal fields and don't violate it, we can actually use techniques to neutralize violence without having to injure people.
Right. Yeah.
The second major discovery of my life was this free energy. When I was taken into laboratories with multiple inventors who actually have devices on their bench that are tapping energy right out of space itself cleanly, safely, and virtually infinitely. And the common denominator of all of those devices was that they're all mimicking and tapping this whirlpool vortex pattern. Now, the third major discovery of my life, and the kind of final one for me, is the whole notion of liberty, which obviously you're deeply steeped in yourself. And what I found was that the same pattern occurs once again, and the fundamental misunderstanding that is risking all of life on this planet is the notion that somehow the fundamental unit of human wholeness is the group. And the group, as you probably well know, is just a concept. The actual reality is an individual, is the body of an individual, the person of an individual, the electromagnetic field of an individual. So we need to move toward a society which is based on not violating any of those individual toroidal fields. And we can't do that when we're involuntarily stealing people's income through taxation, when we're dominating them through the coercion of even the majority, much less just a financial elite. So really, if we apply the knowledge of this fundamental toroidal pattern as the basic wholeness of the universe, whether it's Aikido or free energy or liberty, it's the same pattern occurring, and all we need to do is recognize it, honor it, and harmonize with it, and we can have a thriving planet almost beyond anything we can imagine these days.
Foster, could you just imagine for a moment if what you just said was taught in every elementary school in the world?
Oh, that's my dream come true.
I mean, the first thing I thought of. I said, where does this belong? It belongs in our education system. And
of course, it's not going to be in our current education system because our public education system, and frankly most of the private ones as well, are dominated by this same controlling elite whose purpose is not to set you free and expand your consciousness into free critical thinking, but to actually dumb you down and shape you into a worker who is cooperative, a consumer who is rabid, or a manager who follows the company line, for the corporate and banking interests. So I agree with you that if this kind of liberty thinking was even allowed, much less promoted, in schools all over the world, we would very rapidly be living on a thriving planet.
Well, I have to warn you that you're starting to sound like me. Be careful. I preach that all the time, and there are teachers in my family and friends, and they get hot under the collar. They won't even discuss it, but we won't go there. Well, now. Well,
actually, let's go there for just a second, because frankly, I don't know any more compelling topic than this incredible irony. On the one hand, it's so ridiculous, it's almost like a joke. On the other hand, it's truly tragic and dangerous that the simplest insight that I have ever found, the one thing I have found that every single human being I've ever met agrees to, which is they don't want to be violated against their will. It's like the golden rule times 10. That's the one thing everybody agrees to, but then when you turn around and compare that to the basis not just of royalty and dictatorships, but even to socialism, communism, and even democracy as it's played out now in the world, then there's a complete contradiction. So the notion that we can't even have that conversation in a respectful, open-minded way with our friends and family and coworkers, I think really is where to focus a tremendous amount of attention. And I am deeply grateful to people like you who are willing to step out of the hassle-free zone and do it not only with your friends, but on independent media. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I get a lot of flack, and I get a lot of people saying, and I know they give me they point the finger with their hand up, going, he's the nutcake over here, the cake, And
right.
I know that, and I have to accept that. And there's many times I will not engage in a conversation because I know exactly what's going to happen. So I almost have to pick them a little bit more carefully than I have in the past because I got tired of being pointed at, so to speak.
Right.
Now, this is so compelling. How could we take this concept? How could we integrate it, or even have our school administrators? Do we first have to dissolve our current school system, which I am advocate of? I don't think we have a school system. I think we have we don't realize we have a system where we are just I call them internment camps, where we indoctrinate kids on what they should know because they don't really learn anything. I asked, I'm a businessman, I have my own company, and I know a lot of businessmen, and I asked them, I said, let me ask you a question. If you had a choice between hiring a student, a young man or woman who did nothing during their high school year, they didn't go to high school. They stayed home, but they read one magazine a month. One. A good magazine, and National Geographic, anything. But they read it from cover to cover, and they can read 2-3 pages a day, and then when their parents came home at night, they discussed those 2 or 3 pages with their parents, and they did that for 4 years. Could be any book, I don't care what it is. Or would you take the average high school graduate? Which one would you take? Which one would you employ? Every one of them says, I'll take the one that didn't go to school.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think that your question is a good one about how do we go about it. And frankly, I think unless we get to the root of the illusion of our economic scam, that the educational system, the media system, the justice systems, they will not change. Because the economic scam, this whole central banking, fractional reserve, fiat money scam, which is, all those words are very fancy. They really mean a few people get to print money whenever they want, and you and I don't.
Right.
And that means they're going to end up dominating everyone else's lives.
Correct.
Until that gets really exposed, and it is getting exposed big time right now, as the global economy is collapsing and destroying billions of lives. The news is coming out, and as that's coming out, these other systems are going to be crumbling on their own. The education system, obviously the economic system is crumbling. The education system is going to crumble when people don't have the taxes to pay for it. The media system is crumbling already because I think it's down to something like 23% of the people trust the corporate news. People are waking up.
That's correct.
So as these systems are crumbling, what I recommend to people is, first of all, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for the worst, and then do everything you can to help avoid it. But meanwhile, work on creating independent, decentralized systems that can emerge from the rubble of these crumbling systems, rather than the one world government police state that that the would-be controllers intend to impose on everyone as they crumble the old system.
Right. It's very difficult for people to take action because it deviates from the norm. And when you deviate from the norm, you typically are violating some sort of belief system that you have in you. And I'm talking about religion, I'm talking about a belief about something. And I have had more friends who say, Joe, because I talk about this all the time. That's all I do. It seems like these days, read economic white papers, and talk about this. And I said, we have. They tell me, you're right. I don't disagree with you. I don't know why I don't do anything about it. And they said I have done nothing. I have a friend that has received an inheritance, and recently had a great job, made all sorts of money, and they have all this money sitting in cash. I mean, all of it sitting in cash. And I just say, you may want to, and she says, I know. She says, but for some reason, I cannot believe it. Isn't it interesting? She said, you're right. I don't disagree. But for some reason, I can't believe anything really could ever happen. And I think what happens is people believe what they see. What they see, they go to Panera Bread and have a cup of coffee and a bun or something, and people show up with brand new SUVs. Everything's fine. I mean, the eyes see all this. They don't see abject poverty. They don't see the Federal Reserve is printing money that they don't have. And so everything is fine. And it's very difficult because it violates their belief system in what it is. Yeah, and it's it's uncomfortable news. I've got a friend right now who's writing a book called The Psychology of Non-Perception. When people don't want to actually see what's true, there are amazing psychological mechanisms which kick in because, first of all, it's going to shatter their worldview. Secondly, it's going to threaten their security. And it's basically it's the frog in the slowly boiling pot. If they can just take over very slowly, and just like happened in China, just like happened in Germany, just like happened in Italy and Russia, a lot of Americans still think it couldn't happen here. And what in the world is going to keep it from happening here? I mean, look around at all of the measures that have been taken to legalize the police state, to collapse the economy, to authorize armies for the Fortune 500 companies. I could go on for hours at all of the evidence, and yet still people are going around with their hands over their eyes, their ears, and their mouth going, I don't want to hear about it. But the good news is people are waking up by the millions, and I've really gotten a glimpse into that through having distributed this movie, because the movie's been out for about 10 months now, and already over 8 million people have seen it. It's in 20 languages around the world. There's about 1 million people a month seeing it now. And as I mentioned all these people who are signing up on solutions groups. My wife Kimberly, who made the movie with me, and I have been to over 20 cities on a tour, and everywhere we go, they're just packed houses of people who are relieved to hear something that is beyond this
whole illusion of the two-party polarity, and this whole gridlock where the leaders, so-called leaders, are sock puppets working for the international bankers. People are so thrilled to be getting news of what's real beyond that, and what we can do about it. And I'm interviewed on right-wing shows, on left-wing shows, on conspiracy shows, ET shows, science shows, but really fundamentally within 10 minutes or so, the conversation is pretty much the same. It's like, what the hell is really going on in the world? What can we do about it that is not based on deception and domination, which the whole political system has been about, but is based on fundamental principles of integrity and freedom? And I'll tell you, Joe, this is what's waking up in the world, as you know, and it is spreading like wildfire, thank goodness, because it's a natural part of us.
Well, it's interesting. I had to. I received a medical bill last week, and apparently the insurance company portion didn't get on there, and this didn't get on there. So it was really old. It was 60 days past due, and I'm the old-fashioned guy. A bill comes in, it gets paid that day. Even with my businesses, I have 0 accounts payable and a lot of accounts receivable. Everyone pays me slow. I pay everyone as soon as it comes in. I have an unbelievable, unbalanced balance sheet, But I've done that all my life, and I've always survived well that way, and I sleep better that way. Well, I called this gal, with the doctor's office, and I mentioned that, 60 days, I feel uncomfortable. And she railed about the whole system. I mean, and she went on not only about the medical system, but about the government. And I sat there, and I in hog heaven. I think this is great, I said, go, girl, go, And
she didn't know who she was talking to.
She sounded just like me, on the radio. And I said, this is terrific. And it's amazing, but you're correct. There are more and more people who are now, talking this way. And they're saying, geez, I know I sound like a nutcake, but I got to say something. I can't keep it bottled up or I'll blow up or something. And I'm finding out more and more often. I get stopped if someone hears me talk because I have a New York accent here in Oklahoma, and I do Rodney Dangerfield, imitations on my program just for fun once in a while, I get no respect at all, and I'll be in a store and someone will stop me and say, hey, they'll finger me, they'll show you, hey, yeah. They said, aren't you that radio guy, And,
right.
And it's amazing how many people recognize me and how well the program is doing. And the comment that I receive, and I'm on a conservative program. You figured, well, that wouldn't be that different. And how many people say, I'm glad someone is saying it finally. Someone is finally saying it. And I tell them, you know what, off the air, throw me off. I'll find someplace else. But I'm not going to stop, But the thing is, I bring their ratings up to, their ratings skyrocket.
Well, I did a screening a couple of months ago in Marin County, California, for a group of about 100 progressive activists. And I finally asked, because they loved Thrive. We had a great conversation. And I finally asked, I said, I can't believe you guys are so savvy. I said, how many of you still think Obama is going to rescue this situation? And out of about 100 people, there were about 5 or less. And I thought, wow, this is really good news, because people are actually kind of shedding the exoskeleton of this superstition of old-fashioned government politics and actually looking for what is true, what is truly fair, and what's going to work to turn this thing around.
That is so encouraging. I mean, that is so encouraging. I'm so glad to hear that. I may even sleep well tonight. Who knows?
Now, Joe, I've got to ask you. I know traditionally you're supposed to ask these questions and so forth. I like a conversation. I have to ask you, what woke you up to this whole perspective, which your friends and family aren't necessarily clued into yet?
Well, it had nothing. Well, I think the real answer to that is it happened many years ago, probably 20, 30, or 40 years ago, when I realized, and I had good jobs. I worked for Royal Dutch Shell. I used to sit at management meetings, and the problem was that I never agreed with anyone. I didn't know what the answer was, and I always felt stupid. And I just, I convinced I'm psychological counseling here, but I convinced myself I got to be one of the dumbest people in the world, because people would say something, and these guys are intelligent, a lot smarter than I was, and whatever they said, quite frankly, didn't make sense. And I lived with that for years, and I never did well. I never did well in large corporations. And I always struggled, and I always disliked my job. I disliked going to the Monday morning management staff meetings and whatever. And I had to fight to keep my mouth shut. Whenever I opened my mouth, I got in trouble. And this went on and that and a lot of other things, And then I said, I have to find out why the heck I'm so stupid. I'll be honest with you. I had to find out why I was so. I had to correct it because I couldn't live with myself. I just didn't like me or the way I thought or anything. And I really started to read good stuff. And I started reading, and not only economic reports, but a broad brush of things. And the more I did, and I really, really studied. And I'll give you one example. I hate to be the talker here because I invited you to be on a program, but I used to give speeches on management. I used to be a professional speaker. I used to enjoy doing that just for fun, and I get paid for it, and I enjoy doing it. But I never felt comfortable doing it. Here I am. I had a management degree. I studied management. I read all Peter Drucker's books, everyone, And I literally spent my time at home outlining management books, but I never felt comfortable. And I spoke to some pretty high-powered people. And then one day, I said, this bothers me. This is all part of this process that I was going through in my own mind. And then one day I was sitting home. It was a Monday. Everyone else was playing golf, doing something, and I'm sitting home, reading a book. And this is about 25 years ago. About 25 years ago or so. And I said, here I am on page 786 of the book Management, the Bible of Peter Drucker, the fourth or fifth book that I'm reading from him, by him. And I said, I had 907 pages to go, in the whole stupid book. And I said, I don't know any more today than I knew when I first started out and graduated college. I admit it to myself. I don't know. I said, there's something wrong with my brain. And I got up to go to I drank too much coffee. You know where I was going, And I stood there, and I got hit with a neurological eruption in my body. And I'm not kidding. This sounds like freaky. This sounds like, a supernatural thing, And I stood there, and I was frozen. Because, see, my mind was changing. Everything I was doing, I was changing. My whole mind was changing. I was thinking everything was wrong, everything was wrong. And I realized, it dawned on me the reason why I did not understand management. And the answer is because there's no such thing. And then I tell you, I love giving talks on management now. I love it because I understand. I know. I finally understand. I got to the root cause. I got to the point that made everyone uncomfortable. And the thing is, see, you can manage your inventory. You better has legs. You better manage your finances, or it goes bye-bye. Better manage your data processing, or it goes into electronic never land. But there's one thing: you can never manage people. You can never manage. And I gave a talk to a very, very high-powered group. All like the CEOs in Tulsa, and a gentleman raised his hand. Don't recall what company he was with, and he raised his hand. And he says, "Mr. Cristiano, I beg to differ with you." I said, "Please don't beg. Just say what you want to say, And he went on about blah 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 blah. I said, "Man," he gave me his retort, and I said, "Well, fine." I said, "May I ask you one semi-personal question?" He said, "Sure." I said, "How well do you manage your wife?"
Yes.
The room went silent for 2 minutes, and it was over. It was over. That's all we had to say. If I said that in the very beginning, that speech would have lasted 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, but my answer to your question is I went through a lot. And then one day I attended 20-some-odd years ago, attended a Libertarian Party thing, here. And I'm listening to it, I said, it makes sense, Anyway, it was a grueling process over probably 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't.
Well, I love what you said about the power of when you stopped and asked a question. And I want to mention that for the sake of your listeners, because everywhere I'm traveling now, one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, how can I talk about this stuff with my friends and family and work associates without starting a fight and turning them off?
Right.
And one of the things that I have learned, especially from my wife, Kimberly, is instead of trying to cram your wisdom and information down other people's throats, ask them provocative questions. Exactly. And all of a sudden, their mind is engaged in thinking rather than defending, and you're both on the same team looking for meaningful answers.
Right. Absolutely.
And so many people that I've recommended this to have have contacted me after and said, "Oh my God, it works." Now my wife is talking to me again, and they're actually asking me questions at work and stuff like that. And I want to give a couple of examples of questions to ask. And one of them is just the core moral question of, at exactly what point is it okay with you for someone to hurt someone else or to take their stuff without their permission? Now, you ask someone something like that, and all of a sudden you're in a very interesting brainstorm, rather than going, well, don't you know that it's not fair to, involuntarily tax people and go off and spend it, on wars of aggression and all that kind of stuff. And another example is to ask someone something like, if it were possible, without involuntary taxation, or a few people having a monopoly on force and on money, to have good roads and to have a diverse and vibrant schools and to have people be prosperous and secure without that involuntary coercion, would you be interested in that? And that's a whole different discussion than, here's my worldview, it's the right one, I'm going to, change your mind type of thing.
That's correct. I had an interesting situation where I had a fellow just came back from Afghanistan. It was on my broadcast at KFAQ, and he had disagreed with my program. I put on a whole program about murder. It was really a comedy skit more than anything else. I was talking about we should have, a new holiday called Murder Monday, or a national, not Suicide Day, but National. What's the matter with my brain? Sometimes it doesn't work, Foster.
Yeah.
Homicide Day, and I had all these things. I had concocted this thing. It was probably my best broadcast ever. And this guy from Afghanistan, who just came back from Afghanistan, told me he disagreed. We got to go bada bing, bada bang. And I said, well, where did you learn all this information? He said, well, the government. I said, just answer one question for me, because I don't make anybody wrong. I don't want to say, you jerk, you're an idiot, hang up. I never do, no matter what they say. And I said, answer this multiple choice question. I said, do you believe that the government tells the truth, lies, rarely, or never, rarely, sometimes? I have it backwards. Do you think the government tells the truth? Oh, yeah, rarely, whatever it was, rarely, sometimes, and, all the time, or whatever. And he admitted that the government never tells the truth.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I didn't say anything. He says, no, they never tell the truth. And he stood there and he stopped and he said, oh my goodness gracious. He said, listen to what I just said. He says, I just gave you, chapter and verse what the government told me, and then I tell you that the government never tells me the truth. And he thanked me and hung up. I mean, and the people at KFAQ, they were doing cartwheels in the hall. They couldn't believe it. Usually, drop dead, you bum, you idiot, and that's it. But I never do that. And I tell you, that was one of my best calls. It was amazing, But it's the same thing.
That's fantastic. And if the government runs the schools, then what's happening to the kids?
That's right. Absolutely.
No wonder they're all restless in their seats and not wanting to go to school and having to be drugged to get them to sit still and all that. It's a good sign when you don't fit into the Fortune 500 world. It's a good sign when you're not just a cooperative regurgitator at your local public school.
Right.
It's just that those people need to have nurturance for their own independent thinking and creativity. And we're going to be moving toward that world. And once it gets started, which it is already, it's going to be unstoppable and it's going to be moving very fast.
Yeah. We must stop a station identification. I'm going to get in trouble. I always do because I blabber on and I don't know.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Folks, you're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. We are pleased to have Foster Gamble with us. He's the visionary of the Thrive movement. Many of you have heard about that, and we invite you to call with any questions, 888-773-4496, 888-773-4496. Your email to comments at libertytalkradio.com. We have people on the board, but you're not indicating that you want to ask a question. That's fine, but if you do, I mean, many people say, well, I would have asked a question, but I didn't want to interrupt. But don't interrupt it. It's okay.
No, I encourage people to just jump in with questions because, dialogue is much more interesting than speeches to me. And I also encourage people, if you haven't already, go to www.thrivemovement.com, and you can spend months learning on that website. And the movie is available for free. And if you like it, you can buy DVDs and do home screenings and share it with your friends and so forth.
Now, you can also make a donation to the cause, can you not? Because I think I did that
yes.
once. Yeah.
Yes, it's very helpful to keep the movement going because we came out with the movie in DVD form and also renting it for $5 on the internet. And it was very successful, but people were so desperate for this information that we were having to spend a lot of time and energy, pulling down pirated versions, which was weird for us because we wanted everyone in the world to see the film as quickly as possible. And so we finally decided to just let it go for free and hope that the DVD sales and the donations would sufficiently support the movement. And everybody assured us that it would. And the fact of the matter is that it hasn't. Now that it's available for free, very few people are sending in donations, and our DVD sales have dropped significantly because people who want to see it 3 and 4 times go back to the internet. So if you like this and you think that this movement is worth supporting, then send us a donation. It's very easy to do on the website or before and after the movie when you see it.
Yeah, folks, and be fair, folks. We spend money on a lot of stuff. We go to the movies and it's $8.50 to watch a movie, and usually the movie stinks, and and we get nothing for it. And the popcorn costs $8. For this is money well spent. I mean, this money is going toward something that will benefit you forever, and your children and your children's children. It's a movement. We need to keep this going. Keep the spark, keep the fire going. It's getting bigger, and be part of it. Do not be afraid. Be part of it. Now, when you, Foster, when you mentioned you want people to become more independent, when you say that, what are you referring to? How do people become more independent?
Well, that's a great and profound question, and let me look through that lens to describe to you the Thrive Solutions strategy to move from the world that we're in now, this close to police state world where global domination is increasing, toward a reality where people can truly be sovereign, free, and independent. Because the fact of the matter is it's not going to happen tomorrow. And most of the libertarian and voluntarist philosophers that I've come across, to whom I owe a huge debt of gratitude, still tend to be somewhat ivory tower thinkers. And they, basically say, well, unless everything's absolutely voluntarious, then I'm not going to participate in anything. And so we end up with these fabulous theories which have good logic, moral philosophy, and even good descriptions of how things could work in a free world, but no clue about how to get there.
Correct.
So what we've laid out in our film very briefly, much more in depth on the website, and this is the main conversation I'm in the world right now, is how do we get from here to there? So what we suggest is a basic 3-stage strategy to move toward individual independence. And they're really more like tracks that are happening simultaneously. But the thrust of the first stage incorporates more of what is traditionally known as kind of the core ethic of the progressive political philosophy, which is, how do you spend other people's money well to take care of people who really need it, who are poor, who are sick, who need education, who are don't have health care and so forth. And I think it's a really important question. It's just that it's in conflict with that compassion is in conflict with the core moral problem of going out and taking people's stuff in order to try to solve it. But what we recommend is in stage 1, instead of creating new taxes to do these things, especially when people are struggling just to pay the taxes that are owed already, instead you cut the military budget by at least a half. You're still equal to the whole rest of the world put together. and then you eliminate the Federal Reserve and eliminate the interest that we're paying, because essentially all of our taxes, our federal taxes, go right now just to pay the debt on these fictitious loans that the Federal Reserve makes to the Treasury. And so basically all of our hard-earned money, or vast percentages of it, is going to just pay off the bankers. And how's that working out for us?
Yeah.
But in stage one, that would free up $1 to $2 trillion a year, which would easily handle the health care, the environmental issues, the poverty issues, and so forth, not only for this country, but all over the world. So that's phase one. While that's happening, we're shrinking government down to just the protection of individual rights and the stewarding of the commons, whatever that turns out that is. But it's fundamentally the airwaves, the water, our ecosystems, and so forth.
Right.
And so as government is shrinking down, then we're finding out what we can do without it. And, the history of political and economic freedom is that the more there is of it, the safer and more prosperous people are. So I have no doubts that we're going to find that people are vastly more prosperous without the Federal Reserve, without the domination of a fiat currency. If you have a free market in currencies, the fiat currencies are going to disappear overnight.
Right.
The ones that are backed by solid commodities are going to thrive. The banks that are actually holding your money, they're going to thrive, and the rest are going to be going out of business, as they should have a long time ago. And so that's phase two, is really acknowledging the core ethic of the traditional conservative point of view of sound currency, non-aggression in these foreign wars of taking over other people's resources, and of a fundamentally small government. As we're moving in those directions, I think that we will find out that through the freeing up of the school system, of the currencies, of the banking system, of the communication systems, and so forth, I think we're going to find out that systems run much better, just like your own home and your own mind and your relationships and so forth, through honest and caring human communication, as well as the prosecution of people who violate anyone else or the ecosystems that we depend on to survive. I think we're going to find out that very little, or probably no, authoritarian government at all is needed. But we'll have plenty of time to experiment with that as we're moving through these phases of taking care of people in the transition and then transitioning out of big government.
Right. My wife's an audiologist, and she does not take Medicaid because if someone. First of all, she's been involved in a couple of Medicaid situations where I won't take the time, where the whole thing was a scam,
Yeah.
And so she said, no more Medicaid, none. But if someone goes to see my wife because they have problem with their ears, she turns no one down. If they are totally broke, she turns no one down. And she says, this is what I can do. And she said, and then she gives them a little bill, and she said, here, Margaret, I'm only going to charge you so much, whatever, and it's usually a fraction of what she would charge somebody else, normal. And she said, you pay me something every month if you can. And that's, and these people do. And the thing, and when you consider that, the cost of health care just went down significantly, not by 50%, by 500%. And we would all do that. And this is the way it used to be done. Doctors, you would say, well, if you can't afford, Farmer Jim, how about some chickens,
Right.
And they pay. Somehow the transaction was made, and there wasn't any third party, and everything was left to least common denominator financially, and it worked very, very well. I'm convinced that if we got rid of government health care, that the cost of health care wouldn't go down 50% or 20%. It would go down minimally tenfold.
Yeah. And what if doctors were actually paid to keep people healthy, such that they were on the same team as their patients, rather than making the money off the sickness and off of pharmaceuticals, which tend to just continue and worsen the syndromes. Imagine if they were actually paid to keep people healthy, and the patient, the insurance company, and the doctors were all on the same team. This is the sort of creative things where if people start experimenting with it, and it's a true free market, then people are going to go to the best services at the best prices, and people are going to have to compete, whether it's pharmaceutical companies or doctors or insurance companies. They're all going to have to compete to deliver excellent services and keep people healthy.
Right. And this happened to my wife recently, where she could not get, she has had migraine headaches for years, and it was driving her nuts. They gave her every medication in the book, and nothing helped. And she went to go see the special chiropractor that someone recommended to her, and he did something that was, didn't seem like it did anything at all, and it worked. For the first time in years, she's been headache-free.
Yes.
And so sometimes that works. We never know when it will work, but we can't discard all of this. We can't, can't discredit it, and we tend to discredit things that are not in the mainstream.
Right.
If you had to tell people, what do if those listeners now saying, but what do I do now, Foster? What do you want me to do? I'm sitting here listening. I'm motivated. What do I do? I'm just Joe Blow or Mary Jane, and I'm sitting here listening to you. I go to work every day. I got problems all over the place like everyone else does. What do I do? What do you do?
Well, it's a super powerful question that I appreciate, and I see people asking themselves this everywhere I travel. And fortunately, I've thought about that a lot. It's shaped a lot of the last probably 10 years of my life, is how to answer that question effectively. And here's what I recommend. If you're already know what your purpose is, and you have found issues that you are enjoying working on, then you might want to check out our Solutions Hub, sign up your group on that hub, and that way you can connect with other groups who are working on the same issue, whether it's social justice or chemtrails or fluoride or campaign finance reform, whatever it is. You can connect with other groups around the country and around the world who are working on the same issues, and you can learn from each other and share materials, petitions, all that type of thing. If you are someone who's just concerned about what's going on in the world and you don't know what you want to do about it, then I also recommend that you go to our Solutions Hub and open up what we call the Solutions Toolkit and start reading through it. And it will lead you on a step-by-step process of asking yourself, first, what is the sector that interests me the most? Is it environment? Is it health? Is it education? Is it media or science or arts, spirituality? We have 13 sectors. And then within that sector, what is the issue that concerns me the most? If it's environment, maybe it's pesticides or chemtrails or something like that. So, and then a third question, what is the level of engagement that I'm most interested in? Am I someone who wants to meet immediate needs by working in a soup kitchen, or if I'm a doctor, going to Africa to, help people who don't have health care or something like that? Or am I more a systems person? Am I someone who wants to work in the political system or the economic system or the media system or something like that to try and change the nature of the systems which aren't meeting people's immediate needs? And the third and final category is the consciousness shift itself. Am I someone who wants to work in the area of philosophy and logic and worldview to help people get clear on their approach, on their belief system, because it is out of our belief systems that we take action,
Absolutely.
which creates the systems which either do or do not help people to meet immediate needs. And once you've identified your sort of core approach, what would be your calling, what would give you energy and move your spirit, then there are ways then to connect with other people who are doing the same thing, not only in your area of interest, but to be part of what we call a whole system approach in your community, such that when you're working on, let's say, a pesticide issue, you can be in touch with the media people and the science people and the art people and so forth, who can help you get the research that you need, put together flyers, get on the radio, get on TV or something like that to be effective in your area. So we've done a ton of thinking on how to find your personal calling and how to be effective in the whole systems, both locally and globally, so that you can finally just relax into doing your calling and being in effective communication with other people who are also just doing what they're called to do, but not having to save the whole world by yourself, because that's exhausting.
Okay, well, I tell and please chime in and tell me whether or not I'm off base. I try to impress upon my listeners that the most precious asset you have is time. And if you have time, don't give it to the government. Don't give it to any government. I mean, don't bother writing letters to your congressmen. They're not going anywhere, because it's not Republican against Democrat or against independent. It's them against us. And you have to start becoming more independent of the system. Then you can work with, and then when you work with others away out of the system, that's how you get the million-man march, if you will. That's when you get mass. And do you agree with that philosophy, or would you disagree with that?
Well, I think it's a really profound insight into the vision of where we need to go. I learned from Murray Rothbard that in the transition phase, if you keep your eyes on the goal of total freedom, where you want to go, and then don't create any new violations along the way, you can still sometimes end up working within the system, in a corporate system or in a banking system or even in the government system, working toward the direction of not being dependent on any of those. But at the same time, recognizing that strategically, we may need to work within a system as we are working to transcend that very system.
Right. Well, Foster, it looks like our time is almost up. We have a couple of more minutes. Would you like to just give us a few closing remarks and how people can reach you and what action they should take, and we'll take it, and then we'll take it from there. But one thing I will do before we go off the air, I will ask you if you will please send me a mailing address, a T-shirt size, your T-shirt size, and one for your lovely wife.
Great.
And I have something else I want to send to you. Send it to comments@libertytalkradio.com, a mailing address and that information. And I want to send you something just for being a guest on our show, okay? Don't forget.
Oh, that'd be great. We'll wear it with pride.
Yeah, and don't forget me. Don't forget me. I want to be part of this, and keep me in line and keep me informed, okay?
Sure, and there's no more important step that people can take if they're drawn toward it than to create independent media where you can actually talk about these types of topics without it being censored and suppressed.
Absolutely.
So in terms of closing remarks, that I would say that my main invitation is come to thrivemovement.com, see the movie, explore the website. If you're moved to action, come to our Solutions Hub, and particularly check out a page called What Can I Do? Because a lot of people are going around going, well, the problems are so big, there's nothing that I can do just as a single individual. Well, that's paralysis. And you can move beyond that very quickly. And we've got a David Letterman type top 10 actions that people can take that don't take a lot of time or money. And it starts with getting informed, speaking up, and connecting with others. The next one is bank locally. Buy and invest responsibly. The next one is join the movement to audit and end the Federal Reserve. Keep the internet fair and open and support independent media like this Radio Liberty Talk Show. Support organic, non-GMO farming because we're being poisoned. Require election and campaign finance reform as a transition, ultimately out of government itself, but in the meantime, toward taking money out of the election, taking bribery out of the election process. Advocate for not only renewable, but free energy so that it can come out, because it'll transform the whole power dynamic on this planet more powerfully than any single action, right along with the banking system probably, than anyone that I know. And finally, we have on our website what we call critical mass actions. And if you're particularly interested in an area like an Audit the Fed or to Support Free Energy or something like that. And you can sign up and just express your interest in either supporting financially or putting in your time to come to an action. Then there are thousands of people who are signing up for these actions, and we're going to wait until there's a critical mass of action. So it's not just a few people with signs, outside the Federal Reserve or something like that, but so that we really descend with a mass of people that is undeniable and that gets media attention and makes it safer for everyone and actually gets the job done. So thank you all for tuning into this type of program, and especially to Joe for being bold, getting out there beyond the hassle-free zone and telling the truth.
Okay, Foster, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I enjoyed the program, and I think you did a fabulous job. And I know hopefully this program will just be that one extra grain of sand that'll get all the information out there and just help the entire movement.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity, Joe.